Hey everybody, this is Marina, your podcast host at UNBOSSED. Here we go. At UNBOSSED, I interview amazing women in Chicago. There is so much woman power in this city that I want to provide these women a platform to tell their story. Please connect with us and please consider supporting by sharing, liking, commenting the podcast. Tell all your Netflix friends and family about it. Submit a recommendation for a guest, subscribe on your favorite podcast app, and donate by clicking on the anchor link and help me continue to make great episodes. I hope you enjoy and welcome to the show. Patricia Brown Holmes is the first African-American woman to lead and have her name on the door of a major law firm that is not women or minority owned. A woman of exceptional talent, intelligence, and vitality, Patricia Holmes has chalked up enough accomplishments to fill 3 lifetimes. Over the course of her distinguished legal career, she has practiced law on both sides of the bench, in courtrooms at every level, serving as Associate Judge of the Circuit Court of Cook County, Assistant U.S. Attorney, Assistant State's Attorney for Cook County, and Chief Assistant Corporation Counsel for Municipal Prosecutions for the City of Chicago. By the time she ventured into private practice in 2005, Patricia's skills and experience were firmly established and widely acknowledged. She's one of a handful of Illinois lawyers who have tried cases in state, city, and federal court, as well as state appellate, federal appellate, and Illinois Supreme Court. She's also co-writer of a brief that she presented before the U.S. Supreme Court. Over the past decade, in her role as a successful and sought-after defense attorney, she has represented a wide range of public and private corporate clients in complex commercial, regulatory, and class action litigation, as well as internal investigations involving financial and accounting fraud, corporate whistleblower allegation, contract disputes, and mail and wire fraud. Patricia practices the art of communicating with government officials by employing equal measures of conviction, clarity, and tact. Her 9 years on the bench and her experience teaching judicial seminars have given her valuable insight into how judges think about and analyze cases. This rare combination of judicial knowledge and trial experience makes her a powerful asset, valuable partner, and trusted counsel to a wide range of corporate clients in several industries, including education, transportation, manufacturing, entertainment, industrial, healthcare, and food and beverage industry. Welcome, Patricia. Hey, everybody. This is Marina, your podcast host at UNBOSSED. Today, my guest is Patricia Brown Holmes. She is managing partner at Riley Safer Homes and Cancila, LLP. Welcome, Patricia.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
And I am excited because I'll tell you, when I started the podcast, I started with technologist, moving to women in politics. And I was like, I need more lawyers in my life. Who doesn't want like a good, strong lawyer on a podcast?
You know, I should do a commercial with you saying that. You know, I've never heard somebody say I need more.
I love my law department. I don't get it when people are like, I want less lawyers. I think lawyers are great.
I love that. That's exactly right. You need more lawyers.
Just to give the audience some context about you and who you are before we jump into your professional career and your life. I was wondering, can you tell us a little bit more about maybe where did you grow up, or a story about Patricia as a little girl? Who was she? How was she doing?
So most people don't know this, but I was born in San Diego. And so spent, very early years there, and then moved to Chicago with my mom and dad, and thought that I had moved to the North Pole because it was extremely cold. I recall the first winter that I can actually recall, I think, was the one where folks woke up and snow was like covering your doors. And you get out of the doors. It was like, oh my God, we're in the North Pole. This is great, and who knew, right, that it was a blizzard? I had no clue.
Yeah.
But I grew up, just a nerdy little kid on the south side of Chicago, the oldest of five siblings, and just hung out with my parents and hung out with my siblings, played on the block. This is back in the day when one neighbor we lived on one corner and another neighbor, all the way at the opposite corner of the block. You would put your cars at the edges of the block so that nobody could get up and down the street. And the kids would just get in the middle of the street and we play softball and baseball and red light, green light, and, just all those, hopscotch. One time we drew a hopscotch and we tried to draw it from one end of the block all the way to the.
Wow.
We never made it, but we tried. So we just had a great time, just fun. You pick up a stick and you could find a game. It was just great.
I feel like the car thing where you block the road. I love it because it's like a self-made cul-de-sac. It's like
right. Well, all the neighbors had the same lamp poles because you're in the neighborhood block club, and then the block club is having a party, and somebody would grill, and you'd have hot dogs. It was always great.
That's so cool. Like I have 3 daughters, and I wish for my kids to have some resemblance of that childhood. We were just passing by the neighborhood the other day, and somebody had like a water fight or water balloon going on.
Oh wow! Fun.
But the cops were coming down, and they were like stopping the block. It's just normal fun, and it's like,
yeah. Well, the police when we were kids, at least when I was a kid, they were part of the fun, right?
That's awesome.
Oh my God, yes. I recall we used to, because I lived at a part of the city that is at the very, very edge of Chicago. If you cross the street at the end of the block, you're in another city. You're technically in Calumet Park. And so the Calumet Park police and the Chicago police would kind of patrol up and down that one street, one on one side and one on the other, because that's your territory, right? And so at curfew, a group of us, we would go run down to the end of that block because the Chicago curfew was later than the Calumet City curfew. And so we would cross the street, and then the police would come, speeding down, and then we run across the street to the other side. And it's like, you can't get us, you can't get us. And then they would stop. They would give us popsicles and suckers, and we knew their names. Like Mr. Hilbring. I'll never forget Mr. Hilbring, because we found out, Officer Hilbring was actually married to my 6th grade teacher. And it was like, oh my God, they're married, they're in love, oh no. And I saw her in a totally different way, because she was this mean 6th grade teacher that made us write our timetables over and over. And then all of a sudden she was a human being, because she was married to this police officer who was our friend, who we knew, who knew us. We felt safe around him because, he was Officer Hilbring. He was there to serve and protect. And I think when people talk about community policing, I think that's what they're thinking about, right? At least that's what I hope, that's what they're thinking about. Going back to those days, the police officers know who you are. They know the kids, they know the people, they know the neighborhood, and you feel protected because they're a part of that community. Those were the days. I'm sorry, you got me on a soapbox.
No, this is the best conversation, because what I wonder now is like, how did it get from that to this?
That's a really good question. And I think, some of it had to do with the criminalization of marijuana and, the drug, trade, and that whole time period when everybody was so afraid of crack cocaine, didn't know what it was, didn't understand whether it was worse than regular cocaine. So you had all of these Black and brown folks being arrested and put in jail. And then other folks, who were, running the kilos, who were not getting the same kind of harsh sentences. So the users were getting worse sentences than the dealers. And because people just didn't understand, didn't know. And some of it, I think, was you had, minorities who were the users at the time. And I think now that the opioid crisis is, forefront, people are starting to understand that the user issue is a medical issue. It's a health issue. And the dealer
Absolutely.
issue is where the control of the substance, controlled substance laws are where you really need to focus. You keeping the drugs out of our country or keeping them out of our communities, and controlling them in a way that prevents the medical emergencies from the users.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's so much truth in that, in terms of understanding how the policies that we have applied and enacted, uh, almost unconsciously,
Right,
in
right,
some ways, have now affected the way our communities interact.
right.
And yeah, and also, what do you think the newest Illinois laws around legalization of marijuana could potentially remediate this issues?
It's more complicated, I think, than people
Mm.
realize, because there is a mindset, and
Mm.
the mindset is that if you are a minority and you're in possession of marijuana, you're a criminal. And
Mhm.
so the mindset has to change along with the laws and the rules with respect to possession and use of marijuana. If we are going to be a society that will allow the use of marijuana, it's sort of like prohibition in alcohol, right? It was, oh my God, you can't drink alcohol. And now it's one of the largest industries. And people have figured out that it's really not so much about use as it is about control and education and understanding that you shouldn't drink if you're going to try and get pregnant, or if you are pregnant, or that you shouldn't drink if you're going to operate machinery because it impairs your ability to do so effectively, or you shouldn't drink if you have a presentation to do and you're going to be on a stage or something. So educating people and then giving them opportunities to control use allows us as a society to make money on the sale of a substance that people use at parties and special occasions and dinner, and I mean, who doesn't like a glass of wine? Me, it's champagne.
Yes.
Yeah, right. So it's the same with marijuana, I think. As it's like cigarettes. People have a choice; they can smoke or they cannot smoke.
Yes.
But it's education. It's
Yeah.
understanding what does the nicotine do to you. Some people it's a high, some people it's I don't really know. I never smoked, so I don't really know. But if we look at marijuana in the same way, that we should educate ourselves about it, to allow the use and make it legal. And what drives me crazy is, if you're gonna allow people to make money selling marijuana, it should be more equitable, right?
Yes.
You've got all these kids and all these minorities who've been thrown in jail for years and years selling marijuana. Now it's legal. Okay, let's figure out how to help them, make a legal business out of it.
Absolutely.
We figured it out.
Especially.
We're the United States of America. I'm sure we can figure it out.
Absolutely. I 100% am behind all the things you said. I find it so unjust that the few licenses that have been issued were grandfathered in by some back end deal, or at least that's what it really
That's what it sounds
feels
like.
feels like and sounds like. Because they have not explained any further.
Right. Right.
So it's just an injustice that I hope we see and face as a state, as a city, and really
Right.
think hard about where that should go. And part of the city of Evanston is what they're doing is taking some of the marijuana profit and then putting it back in the community as reparation. I think that's admirable.
Right. I agree.
And you mentioned like you were a nerdy kid, and how did you get interested in becoming a lawyer?
It wasn't me who was interested in me becoming a lawyer. It was my friends. So I always wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to be a pediatrician. I remember being young. I don't know if you know the game Operation.
Yeah.
And I begged my mother, I want this game Operation. She's like, no, I don't know. She surprised me with it for my birthday. And I was like, oh my God, I can operate. I would sit for hours. I would run through batteries with that game, taking out the bones and moving things around. Like, I'm going to be a surgeon, And I was young, and I loved science. I loved math. And that was my thing. even in my high school yearbook, I wrote all the, how people write in each other's yearbooks. And I wrote, this is from pediatrician Patricia Brown. And I'm going to be a pediatrician, and y'all going to be famous as a pediatrician, right? And my senior year of high school, on what's called Law Day, which is May 1st, one of the new assistant state's attorneys, a young lady by the name of Bertina Lampkin, who is now Judge Bertina Lampkin, picked me up for Law Day because, the school's like, hey, you should participate. It's like, okay, fine. So I participated in this Law Day thinking no big deal, right? It's a day out of school. And she takes me out to Markham Courthouse, and I watch her for a full day, prosecuting matters and trying cases. And I'm like, oh my God. And I watched her with a rape victim, and it was just the most spectacular thing I'd ever seen, for her to help that woman at a time when she needed someone, and she prosecuted the case and won. And it stuck in the back of my head, that you can help people in a whole lot of ways. And one of them is by being a lawyer. And so I
that was in
college, still trying to be, a doctor, right? But I'm the person who all of a sudden all my friends are like, hey, this happened. I'm like, well, we're going to go see the dean. Or, hey, this happened. Well, we're not going to do that. Let's do this. Let's get a group together. So all of a sudden I'm an activist. But that's not a word back then, right? It's just not a word. And so I was always that person who was like, well, and I'm only 5'2". You can't tell. and I think I was like this big because I was a gymnast, right? And so I was like this tiny little thing, but I was always, and you got to sort of be that way. My brothers and sisters are all taller and bigger than I am. And so, you got to have that kind of, I can box you around and I'm not afraid. It's like those little dogs that yap, 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 yap. And the big dogs are like, okay, I'll sit down. And so when graduation time came around and I was getting ready to start studying for the medical school exams, my friends were like, you should go to law school. You really should. I'm like, I'm not going to law school. They're like, you ought to go to law school. So I literally signed up to take the LSAT like on a dare. They're like, we dare you, do it. You should do it. Here I am studying for one thing, and I sign up and I literally just plop down and take the LSAT, and I get into Harvard and Stanford and Michigan. Wow. And I was at the University of Illinois. And so I get into the University of Illinois with a full scholarship. And while I'm trying to figure this out, because Harvard meant nothing to me. Stanford, Stanford is in California where my family is, big deal. I didn't have the concept of, wow, this is a big deal, right? I was at the University of Illinois and I had just met this guy, right? So why would I leave? I'm married to the guy, I have kids, thank God. But I'm like, well, I just got a boyfriend and I like him and he's scholarship, and so I should just stay here. So that's what happened. I stayed at the University of Illinois because I met a guy.
I mean, thankfully, so also like, who cares about Harvard or Stanford? You met a guy,
Exactly. It's like I met a guy and he was cute and I was like, oh my God,
Yeah, I mean, I think that's so cool that you didn't know about the prestige of the schools and really like what it meant for you to get in, and also like what awesome friends you have that like,
and they're still my awesome friends, Kathy and Linda and Cheryl. They're
still good friends. They're like pushing you to fulfill your purpose.
Oh my God. And we still push each other to this day to do things.
That is beautiful. I love that. Like you went to law school, and at what point did you give up on the pediatrician dream? And was there, like, I know there was the courtroom experience. Was there another experience that were like, yes, I'm meant to do this. I'm fulfilled in this. No.
You
still want to become a doctor today?
You know what? but my family teases because something happens. I go, well, wait a minute, you need to do this, and they're like, okay, Dr. Holmes, because I'm like all about trying to figure out the science of the body. Well, okay, if your finger hurts, but it might not hurt because of the finger, it might hurt because of something that's going on in your arm, So, tell me what you've been doing. They're like, all right, Dr. Holmes,
Nice. So you're still a doctor, but you decided to go and get your law degree. And
but it actually helped me. I'm a cancer survivor. And
wow.
and so I was, diagnosed at the time. I had a 16-year-old stepson. My daughter was 4, and my son was literally months old. And I was so tired. I didn't know what was going on. My body, I'm trying to figure out, like, is it because I'm older and I got this baby and, like, what's going on? And I kept going to the doctors. And then it was me helping them figure out, because they would say, no big deal. And I'm like, no, that's not,
something wrong.
No, something's going on, because this doesn't always happen. That doesn't always happen. And when I do this, this happens. That's not how it ought to be, And I was very persistent. And then I got to a doctor who said to me, he's like, you have 4th stage Hodgkin's lymphoma. You might have 6 months to live. And I can't, he's like, you have to have surgery right away to get a port and start chemo. He's like, I just don't know if I can save you. And I'm like, oh my God, you gotta be kidding me. And then he said, well, you do research, I'll do research. He's like, pray, do yoga, laugh, have fun, we'll do everything we can to try, And that's what I did. I did the research, and I found this new drug. I brought it to him. What about this? He's like, let me look into it. So he looked into it. He's like, oh, this actually might work. It was called Neupogen, a drug made by Amgen, a company called Amgen. He's like, I'm going to buy stock in this because this stuff could be good. I'm like, forget the stock. If it's going to save my life, save my life. Worst mistake I ever made. That Amgen stock was like dollars. Now it's hundreds of dollars, right? Wow. Oh my God, I should have bought it. I don't know if he did, but I should have, right? And it was the Neupogen that, flipped things for me as I was getting chemo treatment, because it's a white blood cell enhancer, and I needed white blood cells, and it was that thing. And the only reason we knew that is because I did the research.
Wow.
I needed calories, carbohydrates, and protein. So he said to me, you've got to gain weight. You've got to eat as many calories, carbohydrates, and protein as you can, because that works with the chemo, right? Because it's a chemical reaction that's actually countering the cancer. Mm-hmm. I gained 75 pounds. Like, you can stop now. And I'm like, well, you told me to gain weight. I'm an overachiever. You should have said something.
I blew it out of the water.
He's like, well, and he's like, well, the weight actually helped. It did help, So I survived a 4th stage cancer, like at a time when people just were not surviving 3rd stage, let alone 4th stage. And so it's been 22 years because my baby's 22 years old.
That is a beautiful story. I'm so happy you're here with us, because it's just an amazing story to tell. And also, like, what a turn of event where you're like, think you want to be a doctor and you use your own skills to collaborate with your doctor to figure out a solution for your body. I feel like that is what is needed in also medical treatment nowadays, because you know your body best.
Exactly.
You knew that there was something there, and you knew what could work and what doesn't work. I love that.
Yeah. Well, and I happen to have a great doctor too. Is Krishnan Srinivasan. And I call him Dr. K. And he was just wonderful. And his whole concept was, don't let somebody else tell you about your body. You know your body. Push. And so, I did. And I tell you, I occasionally I say to myself, because I've lost touch, I say to myself, I gotta find Dr. K
Yeah.
and let him know I'm still around, and thanks to him, I'm here. You know.
Yeah, I hope. Well, I hope in some way of fortune he gets to listen to the podcast, and
That would be
maybe he hears your gratefulness. And I am so grateful too for for hearing that there's doctors that actually get away from their ego and really like dive into collaborating with the patient. I think that's beautiful.
Right.
So you, what were you working? What were you doing while you were going through the cancer experience? Where were you at in terms of your
I was
profession?
actually a judge. So I am the youngest person in the state of Illinois to ever have been appointed as an associate judge.
Wow.
And I was 36 at the time. And, my cancer came about, I think it was two years in, so because I was 38. So I was on the bench, practicing, in the judiciary. So basically resolving cases, and I was at the time assigned to juvenile court in Chicago, in Cook County, and
Wow.
loving it. And my courtroom clerk came to my office, and I was passed out on the floor, and they had to rush me to the hospital, and that kind of started a whole
chain of events.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned in your bio that you've tried cases at the state, civil, and federal level.
Yes.
And I know there's significance in it because I rarely hear lawyers that do this, especially in criminal law. But can you tell us the significance of like really being exposed not only to as a lawyer on the defense side, on the prosecution side, on all this level, plus being a judge? You've done all of the side of law, it feels like.
It's very, very rare because most people, if they come out of law school, they go to a law firm and they practice in the law firm their entire career. Or they might go to government and practice in government their entire career. Sometimes you might go one from the other. But it is extremely rare to have the experiences that I've had. So I was in city court as the Chief Assistant Corporation Counsel. So I ran a unit for the city of Chicago. So that puts you sort of in that quasi-criminal, quasi-civil court, but it's really local. I was an assistant state's attorney, and so therefore I did county prosecution, state prosecution. I then was in the federal government as an assistant U.S. attorney. So that's federal prosecution. Yeah. So all of that's on the prosecution side at every level.
Yeah.
As an assistant state's attorney, I was able to also do appellate work. So I have appeared in the state appellate court, and very unusual, I appeared twice in the Illinois Supreme Court. So it is extremely rare to have a lawyer who has done trial court work, appellate court work, and Supreme Court work on the state side. Then when you get to the federal side, same thing. I've done the trial court work in the federal system. I've done appellate court work and argued appeals in the Seventh Circuit. And I had a brief. I didn't argue it, but I was on the brief in the U.S.
Supreme
Court. So every level on federal and state side.
Beautiful.
I mean, I it's a rare thing. So I don't even know many minorities who have ever, had that kind of an experience.
I can't believe I'm talking to you right now. You're like a rock star, the rock star of law. So like, I guess I wonder is like, how did you get to, what inspired you to like move and get to do all this job? Was it a matter of opportunity? Was it a thing of interest and curiosity? And how did you go about it?
Well, you know what? I will tell you, I think it was a lot of luck, a lot of skill, and a lot of just serendipity, and a lot of fun. That's the key thing. I was having fun. And so when you're having fun, you're doing a good job, and people are like, they're noticing you. And then I would have people say, you know, you ought to be doing this. And I go, well, okay. And then they say, I'm gonna connect you with my friend. And they would connect me with people, and I would meet them, and they'd say, you should come work here and do this. Okay, that sounds interesting. So it was that kind of thing where people saw me do a good job. They saw that I was loving and having fun at what I was doing. And I was always helping someone. And so those people who I helped were in turn then trying to help me. And it just turned out to be, that, I mean, I can't even tell you how many people have come up to, hey, I remember you helped me do this, or I remember I needed, something, and you met with me and you connected me, that kind of thing.
Oh,
And
wow.
sometimes I remember, sometimes I don't. But the way my brain thinks is more like, well, how can I help you accomplish what you're trying to do? And nothing in it for me. I just want to help you. And sometimes,
It turns out to be good.
yeah. And then sometimes people don't like it. They're like, okay, stop, I don't need you to help me. I can do it myself. And it's like, okay, I'm sorry.
Oh my God, that's so cool. What is the biggest truth and the biggest misconception about working for the government, if you were to tell me? So popular belief,
Right.
it's slow and it's hard and it's thankless and
Right.
yada yada yada.
The biggest truth about working for the government is also part of the biggest myth, right? So you hear people say, oh, government workers are lazy, or government workers don't know what they're doing, or the bad people go to the government, the good people are in private sector. Not true. People who work for the government work hard. I mean, really hard. And they do it for little money, right? So private sector is a whole lot more money. But government people have a commitment and a passion about what they're doing, and are really smart and do great work for, like you say, very little thanks. Because people tend to be sort of like, well, you ought to do it. Well, why? This is when you work for the government, you're working for the people, you're working for the public. And we tend to treat those people very poorly. I recall being in the state government and looking around the office, and the floors were all tattered, the carpet all tattered, the furniture was all worn. And the boss was like, we really do need to get better furniture, because it's part of how you feel good when you come to work, right? Well, the minute he tried to get new stuff, there was all kinds of complaints. Oh, you're trying to spend government money, and that's government money. People complaining. So we never did get those amenities. Simple things. A nice desk, some carpet that's not all tattered and nasty and stained up, 40 years old. Well, so then what happens? Good people leave. Because then good people say, well, why am I going to stick around here?
Yeah.
And don't even give me. I remember in one of my government jobs, you have the legal pad.
Notepads.
You had to use all of the paper and then give this part, the back part, in order to get another notepad.
Wow.
Like, come on, seriously? I got to hold on to a notepad in order to get another notepad. It's simple things like that. So then when I moved to the next stage and notepad, they're like, hey, you need a notepad here, have a notepad. You feel better about what you're doing. You work harder because you feel like, oh, gee, I've got resources.
I got tools.
Yes, I think that society should rethink how we treat people who work in the government and stop being so, I don't know, penny wise and pound foolish, as they say.
I think especially on the wrong things, because for a fact, we give away money to foreign entities and countries. Like, we got all the money in the world from a government, right? But we do not treat the employees that actually work hard and are helping the community. And we should pay them well. We should treat them well. So there's definitely some rethinking that needs to be done in terms of allocation of funds and how we are investing our funds.
No, I agree with that 100%. 100%.
what has been I don't know. So that's like the biggest myth and misconception that people have. What is something that maybe surprised you throughout the years to learn about the government? Like, I know there's probably a million things, but from a public perception perspective, is there something that you're like, you should know this about the government, and you should know that this because the public thinks differently about it?
Just more of the same. There are good people who work for the government and people who try hard. And I think sometimes the public makes it hard for those people to do their jobs, because what they hear is the one person who might have done a criminal act, or the one person who might have done something. So they hear that one thing, that 5%, and they forget about the 95 that's great. And I think that we need to flip the focus. Right? The focus should be on the 95% that's great, not the 5% that isn't. And if you do that, then I think what you'll find is that you can be more supportive of people who work in government. I have several friends who are U.S. Representatives, and I do everything I can to help them raise money because I know where their heart is. I know how hard they're working to make things better in their communities. And so, I could choose to focus on the negative and say, "Oh, I'm not giving money because they're all crooks." Well, they're not. They're trying. They took the chance to step out and to try and do something great. So why can't we support them? There's nothing worse than somebody who says, "Hey, I'd like to try this," and everybody says, "Oh, well, that's not going to work. Oh, well, that doesn't. You're stupid for doing that." Well,
Yeah.
come on, seriously. How about you try and help that individual?
Yeah.
If it works, then
It could be
maybe it's better. Yeah, maybe it's better.
Yeah. That is so cool. And speaking of U.S. representative or friends that you have that are you thinking about running for office?
No.
I think you could be really good.
Absolutely.
Remember the story about your friends forcing you to go to law school?
I know. That's why when people bring it up, and trust me, they bring it up all the time. I start off with no and I end with no, and I'm saying no in the middle. No.
You know what? I cannot wait to vote for you. Let's just put it that way.
You're never going to be able to. So
I'll write your name in. I'll form a coalition with your friend and just write your name in.
The reasons that we're talking about now, everybody would be like, "Oh yeah, Patricia Brown Holmes, she's nice. And the minute I put my name on a ballot, oh, wait a minute, don't pick up all the dirt, no, no.
Oh, well, don't just burst my bubble. I have hopes. Okay, I have hopes. Let's say not now.
You can have hopes. No. Keep your hopes. I'll keep my notes.
Okay. How about being a Black woman in leadership positions, especially within the government, right? What are some of the lessons that you've learned? Let me start with a different question. Not that you regret anything you've done, I'm not saying that, but if there was advice that you would tell your younger self, right, looking back, what would that be?
If I could tell my younger self, I probably would say enjoy the moments more, right? Like, because I mean, everything that I've done in my career, I've had a great time, but sometimes I was so busy, with the next thing, the next thing, that it was, it's like that whole mindfulness thing. I'm really into that. It's like, pay attention to what you're doing right now and enjoy that. Doesn't mean you don't plan for what's coming next. You should, but enjoy what's happening right now, and try to get as much as you can out of it, and grasp it to take it with you to the next step. I look back on some of my experiences and I'm like, oh my God, I did that. But I didn't stop to take the picture in my brain. Twice in the Illinois Supreme Court, I can't even remember what the court looked like at the time, right? I didn't soak it in. I was like, okay, got to do the argument, and then I got to get back and write a brief, right? I should have been like, oh my God, I'm in the Supreme Court. Look around, take a picture. It was like, I went, I argued, I won, and I came back and did the next thing, you know. So I would say stop and enjoy your wins, enjoy your successes, have fun. My husband coaches football for high school. On sort of on, so he's a vice president of a university, Chicago State University, but he coaches football on the side as a fun thing with his buddies at his former high school that he graduated from, Leo Catholic High School. And one year they went to the state championships. And so there are all these games. There's like 4 or 5 games that lead to the championship. And every time they won, I made him celebrate as if they had won the state championship.
Oh.
Because, it's like in the back of my mind, I'm saying, well, what if you don't and you get there and you lose? You've wasted all those opportunities.
Wins. Yeah.
To be happy. So every time they won, they were out all night with the coaches and hanging out. The coaches having a good time, just celebrating those wins. And they kept winning. Eventually, they got to the game before the end. They lost, but they had all of those memories of celebrating to get to that point. And I wish I had done that to celebrate new wins as my career progressed.
Yeah, I love don't waste an opportunity to be happy. I love that.
That's exactly right. That's really my word. That's my word. Happy.
That is beautiful.
Happy.
Hey, have you ever seen this TV show called The Black Lady Show? It's a newer TV show. Okay.
It's called Black Lady Show?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No, I've never heard of it.
It's excellent, and they have this.
Is it streaming or is it on
HBO, I believe? I'll send you the recommendation. But it's a funny show, and they have this sketch in there where it's called The Black Lady Courtroom, and all of a sudden there's like the defense lawyer is a black lady, the prosecution is a black lady, the type person,
court reporter
is a black lady, the judge is a black lady, the security guard is a black lady, and then they go into this dance. They go, the black lady courtroom, black lady. So I just
that's hilarious. But let me just tell you, I've never seen that. So
you've never seen that?
No, I mean in real life, no.
Yeah. How close have we gotten?
I was typically the only black person as the judge or the lawyer. Occasionally, there might be a black court clerk. The clerk's office might have a clerk that would be black and female, but very rare. I was always the woman or the black person or the minority in the courtroom. No matter what side I was on, whether it was defense, prosecution, the judge, whatever.
Got it. Well, I would love to know whenever you experience the first black lady courtroom. I think that could be fun to be like black lady courtroom.
Right. Well, I am working on a major case right now for a Fortune 50 company, and we were remarking that the 2 lead lawyers are African American females, and on the outside, and the lead lawyer for the company is a black woman. So it was like 3 of us black women leading the case, and it's like, oh my God, this is big stuff. This is big news,
I do that with my female coworkers too. Sometimes it's very rare, but we all end up being women talking business. Right. It's like, wow, this is so cool. Right. What are some of the lessons that you've learned as a woman? I want to say as a woman in a leadership position, because there's such amount of big leadership that you've had to add to try cases and really defend them as well. Do you have a few lessons that you can tell us that you go by that have stayed with you through the course of time?
Yeah, so particularly now as a managing partner of a large law firm, I'm the first black woman ever in history to have my name on the marquee, and to manage a large firm that's a national firm ever.
Nationwide, there's not ever.
It has never, ever, 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 never.
What?
Ever.
Seriously?
Never, ever, never. I am the first.
Wait. My
name is on the door. Riley Safer Holmes and Cancila. We are a national firm. We have offices in California, in Irvine and San Francisco, New York, Chicago, Ann Arbor. And we try cases across the country. You know, we represent Fortune 50, Fortune 10, Fortune 100. We're a national firm, and I am the first Black woman whose name is on the door, and I'm the managing partner ever. I manage the entire firm nationwide. Ever, never,
nationally,
ever. Yes. And
well, can we just take a pause to like,
hey,
awesome.
But what I would say is I learned, you listening is important, right? Listening and understanding your audience, and then persevering and being relentless, and resilient, because it's difficult for people to listen to someone and take leadership from someone who they don't necessarily view, or haven't always seen in leadership positions. So, when I started to lead the firm, there were those folks who were kind of like, well, let me make sure that the white guy says what you just said, right? Now, what I learned is that I could get upset about that. It wouldn't get me anywhere, right? That's only going to play to the stereotype. So I would say, why don't you ask him? I would invite, hey, you know what? Here's what I want to do, but let's check with him too. See if he thinks the same thing.
Okay.
And then having him be an ally. He would come in and say, hey, I'm doing what she said do, as opposed to undermining, because oftentimes you see folks and they undermine. He would support. He said, hey, even if he didn't agree, he would say, let's try it. And then he would come back to me and say, I'm glad we tried that. That was a great idea. You're doing a great job. Because people then tend to think that if you're not doing things the way they always do it, or the way they think it ought to be done, then it's not right. And my view is, hey, there's more than one way to do stuff. I've got, 3 kids, like you've got 3 kids. Guarantee you, I don't know your kids, but I will guarantee you that not one of them was potty trained at exactly the same time and in exactly the same way as the other.
Absolutely.
It just doesn't happen. They will walk differently, at different times. They will teeth at different times.
Yeah.
They will talk at different times. They will sing at different times. They will learn differently because they're different. Yeah. And different doesn't mean better or worse. It's different. That's all. And so I think letting people get to know me as a person, and then understanding, hey, I'm married, I've got kids, I've got a house, I live in a neighborhood, same as you, because so much of what they hear and see on TV is negative, and they really don't think that there's anything positive out there. So I invite people to my house. Hey, come on over. And they're like, oh my God, this is a nice neighborhood. This is a nice house. It's like, yeah, just like you. and so letting people in, I think, as a leader, letting people know you're human, letting people know that, I'm not arrogant. I'm not vested in what I think. I'm vested in what's good for us, what's good for the group, and that I will sacrifice. I will run through fire for this firm because it has my name on the door. I'm not here just for me. I'm here for the people coming behind me. I'm here to make sure that there's a legacy 100 years from now. And I tell them all the time, when I'm long gone, keep my name on the door, please. Don't take my name off the door. Keep the legacy alive. Like Jesse Jackson, keep hope alive.
That's awesome.
So that's one of the things I learned as a leader. Listen and make sure that people understand who you are. Yeah. Because then they're more likely to follow you because they understand who you are and they can support the ideas because they then understand that you're about the whole, you're about the group and not about the individual.
I love that. I love everything you said. There was something that you said about how you create allies. And I think that's very important as a woman of color. And it got me thinking about, like, did you have this conversation with them beforehand? or like how do you set it up so that they don't, or maybe you don't, and maybe you just see what happens? Like, do you set it up in some way in which they can support your leadership, or do you expect them to support it? How does that work in your world?
I don't have any expectations. But what I do is I try to build allies and build friends individually before trying to lead a group of people. So I will go and talk to the individuals. Hey, are there questions you want to ask? Is there anything you need to know about me? Here's what I'm thinking. Here's my plan for the future. Here's my strategic view. Let's talk about it. And let's talk about how you can contribute to that strategic plan. So I'm getting them vested also. And I will do that with each and every person who's going to be a part of the group. And sometimes people don't want to agree. They're like, I disagree. I respect that you disagree. However, there can only be one view at a time. So let's try my view. If it doesn't work, we'll try your view. Or I might say, you know what? I like your view. We'll scrap my view. Let's try your view first. But you got to be vested in your view. So you can't just complain. There's nothing worse than somebody who complains. That's not right. That's not right. Okay, how do we fix it? I don't know. Well, you don't get to complain if you don't have a fix. And so I always tell people, they know it. They tease me about it around here. But it's like somebody says something, it's like, how do we fix it?
Yeah.
And when are you going to start? Because you don't get to say, that's broke, somebody needs to fix it. See, that's broke, I will fix it, or I will be in charge of getting it fixed. You don't get to just say it's broke and complain and nag about it and walk away.
Nice. I love that. I've heard that how do we fix it first, but I love that you put the onus on them and tell them, like, when are you going to start fixing this?
That's right.
It sounds like
if you can't fix it, that's fine. But be in charge of finding the fix.
Yeah, I like that.
Take ownership.
I think that's something that I'm a huge problem solver, and I think that's something that I've missed and I'm gonna take on for myself is like, I see the problems, I see that I bring solution, but I was missing the step of like owning it, right? And really like pushing it forward. And that's honestly like hard. It's hard because like you have to, if you don't have the power to fix it, you have to influence, you have to try to convince, you have to, and it really takes a lot of skill to try to get your idea bought in across and all that good stuff, which is a good lesson.
Right. That's exactly right.
We, believe it or not, at almost that time.
Oh, wow. I can talk to you all day.
I know. I have so much more to ask you, but I'm going to go into the outros question because I have a couple of things that I want to ask you just for fun. And I hope to see you back on my podcast in a year or two. And hopefully you're no longer the only one Black woman with a name on the door.
There you go. That is my goal. I can be the first, but I do not want to be the
only one. Yeah,
that's right.
What is one thing that we don't know about you that you may want to share?
Somebody asked me this the other day. They said, what is one thing that we don't know about you that we can't find on the internet? And so I was like, and here's something. I flew a Cessna plane when I was in college.
What?
Yeah. So I was an engineering student, remember, because I was trying to be a doctor.
Science, yeah.
So I started off in industrial engineering, and there was a class that you had to take on aeronautical engineering and aerospace. And you had to learn how to fly a plane as part of that class. And so I had to fly a Cessna plane. The four seats. Okay. 4 seats. But because you got to have your instructors and, all this. And so that's that kind of thing that happened, again, that you don't really take stock, that this is a big deal, right? Yeah. It's like it happened, you move on to the next thing, and you keep going, and you don't even talk about it. And I raised it one time. Somebody asked me a question in a small group, and I said, yeah, I flew a Cessna. I've known you for 15 years, and you never said anything about it. I don't believe you. I'm like, So I'm asking my mother, Mom, do you remember? But you think back, there were no cell phones. There were no selfies. I mean, Polaroid cameras had just started coming out. So there's no real documentation. It's not like you're like, hey, yeah, let me put it on social media, right? But it happened. I mean,
that is an awesome opportunity. That is really cool.
yeah.
I hope to fly a plane too soon
Yeah,
here in the future. I don't know. What is a book that you have gifted the most, or if you don't have a resource that you recommend the most?
Let me say the most.
And what that should trigger is basically like not just the last book you read, but something that you really like, that the audience or I may want to. I'm a huge book fan, so I may want to read that, either for the podcast or for myself.
So there are several, but it's I like the short stories of Old Henry, because they teach lessons, and you can read. Like, I keep it by my bedside, and I have given it to folks because it's just short stories. There may be 5 or 6 pages long, but you learn a lesson in each story.
Nice.
And very interesting, and it's just one of those kind of things. It's like Bible parables, you know what I mean?
Nice.
But not not the religious background, you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. And they're called Short Stories of Old Henry, correct?
Yeah.
Is there a book that you would write? And what would be the title of the book?
If I were to write a book, I could probably write a book called My Life as a Lawyer. and
As a doctor lawyer.
Not old. I just want to make sure you're clear on that. Old Henry, not old.
Okay.
Old period Henry.
Okay.
But it would be my life as a lawyer, because I tell you, I got some stories. And, whenever I get started with folks telling stories about my life as a lawyer and things that have happened, from the diversity point of view, stuff that's happened in my courtroom, cases that I've been involved in. If I could write a book on that kind of stuff, man, oh man, you could have a TV series.
I would read it. That sounds really interesting.
I'm just telling you, like, I could horrify you with stories. I can make you laugh with stories. I can make you cry. I'm just telling you, there's so much.
Well, what is one story that you can tell us to finish up the episode?
You know how people say when you go to court and they sentence you that it's throwing the book at you, right? Have you heard that saying? Yeah. Somebody's going, oh, the judge's going to throw the book at you. Well, I had a case where I was going to sentence a guy, and he was actually going to be sentenced for a long time in prison. And he came in, and it was always my custom not to have people in the courtroom in handcuffs. I would ask the sheriffs to take the handcuffs off and not have the ankle shackles so that the person feels like a human being. And so I'm giving the sentence, I'm talking, and I'm telling the guy that, I'm so sorry that I'm going to have to sentence you, etc. And the next thing I know, he reaches over and grabs the statute that's sitting in front of him, and he throws it at me. And everybody freaks out, of course, and they grab him and they tackle him, and it's like, whoa, I kind of duck, like, what the heck? And he says, well, you were about to throw the book at me, so I threw the book at you first. And I go, sir, are you kidding me? You're in a courtroom. You just got tackled by the sheriffs. He says, I know. He says, can I take you to McDonald's when I get out of prison? And I was like, okay. This is when it's like, wow.
Oh my God. I wish there was like this like recording of, well, probably like a court recorder, since it's all public information, would have all these stories documented.
Oh, they're documented.
Yeah.
The court reporter is taking it down.
Yeah, she's like,
juvenile court. So in juvenile court, the transcripts are private, so you can't get to the transcripts unless you're party to the case. But the court reporter was taking it down. I mean, it was just like the weirdest thing to happen. You know, it's like he throws a book at me. He's like, "You were gonna throw the book at me, so I threw the book at you first." You know? And then the whole, "Can I take you to McDonald's when I get out?"
Oh my God.
I'm like, okay.
That is so good. Well, I'm so glad you are doing the work that you do. You're staying in the business. You're pushing through the issues. It was a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much. You're like my new favorite law hero. I love it.
You're so sweet. I appreciate you so much. Thank you.
Whenever I get in trouble, no, I'm never gonna get in
trouble. No, don't get in trouble.
If I ever
need me, contact me.
If I ever need a lawyer, I'll call you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Patricia. I'll talk to you soon again.
All right. Thank you very much.
Woo! There you have it. I hope you liked this episode, and please don't forget to share, like, comment on the podcast link. Tell all your networks and friends and family about it. Submit a recommendation for a guest at www.unbossed.io. Subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Donate by clicking on the anchor link and help me continue to make great episodes. You can find all this information on www.unbossed.io. See you next time. Oh, that was good.